Hi everyone, it's Catherine and I'm back with Claire for our reread of Clash of Kings. And I was just saying, we're really powering through it. We're over a third the way through, I think, already, or almost there anyway. Tonight we're discussing all the way from Tyrion 4 to Cat 2. And next week we'll be looking at Jon 3 to Tyrion 7. So Tyrion, if anything, has shown us how fast we're moving through things. So, Claire, we've 2 Tyrion chapters this week, and we've 2 next week. So
Yes.
we're really piling up on Tyrion chapters, and Arya chapters actually. And we haven't even had a Dany chapter. We've only had 1 Dany chapter. So
we get a Dany chapter next week.
Next, yeah. So it's been slow for Dany. So Tyrion 4 is him setting little traps, and yeah, what did you think of Tyrion 4? We start off with Pycelle.
I think this chapter is so this is where Tyrion tries to start to manipulate some of the key players. So this is a real kind of Game of Thrones type of chapter, and it shows you this series of chapters actually that there's a massive divide between the rich and the poor, between the hungry and the massively overfed. I mean, the chapters that we've got to discuss, just reading them, it was like, this is just chapters making me really hungry. And then another chapter where it was like, oh, I feel overfaced by all this rich food. Just the contrast between the two. And it just keeps flipping between one and the other. So you've got like the feasts at King's Landing and at Winterfell, but then you've got Arya in a situation where, you know, she's thinking about eating all sorts of things out in the wilderness in the Riverlands. So we get a real sense of this massive divide. And also, again, just going back to what we've said before about the pace, it's interesting. I think maybe there are more chapters with characters like Tyrion and Cat and Sansa, maybe not so much, but where they're in one particular location. So there's a lot going on for them in that particular location. So the time, you know, things will happen in a day or an afternoon, whereas in Dany's chapter there'll be, you know, where people are on the move, like Jon's on the move, Arya's on the move, you know, those kind of road trip point of views.
Theon, and Dany,
they do stretch out. So when we definitely get a sense of that when we start poking around in the point of views. But for this one, again, this is, for me, this chapter is rereading it makes me feel very different. And I just think, Tyrion, you're not as clever as you think you are. You're actually kind of quite similar to Cersei in a lot of ways. So he does this sort of laying traps for the key players like Pycelle, Littlefinger and Varys, because, you know, he wants to find out who he can trust, I guess, and who's got, you know, who's running backwards and forwards to Cersei. So we find out at the end of this, well, we find out what's happened in the next Tyrion chapter, which is in a couple of chapters' time. We'll get to that. But yeah,
But can I just say before, he has the answer on page 2 of this chapter.
Yeah.
Because he gives Pycelle 2 letters and only 1 raven goes out.
Yes. That's true. I hadn't thought. Yeah. So it's, I mean, you get a sense of things like I like the fact that through Tyrion's chapters you do get a sense of what's happening with the small folk and what's happening just generally, what the atmosphere is. So there's a few bits of insight here. You get an insight into the kind of middle class. You've got like the bankers and the bakers and the grocers who are going to appeal to the hand for protection from these marauding mobs of people who, you know, the price of everything is going up and food is just unaffordable. And you've got people like Joffrey, hideous little cretin who's like throwing, he's like sending spears down to people, you know, just horrible. And you've got the sense again of this mounting dread of either Renly or Stanley. Now, it seems to be that at this point, Tyrion is a little bit more worried about Stannis than he is Renly. And he's laying all these kind of like, you know, this is the chapter where he talks to various different people about sending Marcella to Dawn and sending Tommen to the Eyrie to marry Robert Arryn and all these like crazy things that he's putting out there. I mean, it works. It does pay off, and it does work out in his favor in the end. But I think maybe he just has to be. Maybe it has to be because of the taunting and the treatment from his father that he's had all his life. Maybe he does have to puff his chest out and be like, "This is where I have to prove myself. I'm here at the behest of my father. You know." He has all these mental gymnastics about how he can deal with Cersei and the best way to, the best mood to approach her in, and how to, you know, he kind of likes to think that he's manipulating Cersei. I mean, in my notes here, I've said in reality, I think probably the people that he's trying to manipulate, some of them, like Littlefinger and Varys, and probably Bronn, and to an extent Cersei and Pycelle, think that he's a bit of a fool, and that maybe he's not as clever as he thinks he is. So I think certain other characters have got the measure of Tyrion and what he's trying to do. I'm just trying to see if there's anything else that I really got from this chapter. It's just him figuring out who he thinks he can trust, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I was just as you're saying there about him like kind of puffing out his chest and everything. It's very different to when Ned was Hand, like all the way through Game of Thrones, and he's constantly second guessing himself, and he thinks he's the dumbest person and the least qualified person when he enters the small council, and he doesn't last that long.
Yeah.
So I think Tyrion is definitely the complete opposite, and I feel like he's achieving more.
Yeah.
So while it might come across as being a bit irritating, I think for the most part he's probably a way more efficient Hand than, say, even Jon Arryn probably in this position. Perhaps Tywin would be the only one, but then even Tywin would be scheming to get somebody into King's Landing, if Aerys is on the throne. Yeah, I have a couple of questions with the Pycelle thing. First of all, he already has his answer with Pycelle. I think Littlefinger is going into it. I think that the trick is he wants them to trust him. He can't trust any of them anyway. So when he's counting off 1, 2, 3, it's not just to discover who's going to betray him. It's also like, okay, they think I'm trusting them now. So with Varys and Littlefinger, you know, like because I feel like he gives Littlefinger way too much, but then he has to, because Littlefinger otherwise won't play a game at all. With Pycelle, there's a couple of things that he notices. By the way, I'm totally obsessed with the Maesters this time around. Completely obsessed. So he steals a bottle of what I think is widow's blood, because that's the last thing that he names. And widow's blood is the poison that people speculate Tywin may have been poisoned with before he died. Isn't that right?
Yes. Yeah.
So I just wonder what happens with that little bottle that he steals. And is that widow's blood, and was he poisoning Tywin, or what was he doing? I don't know. I just wonder. Maybe Shay got the little bottle. I don't know. But I wonder what happens.
I do think somebody was. There was something wrong. It wasn't a straightforward death, was it? He stank up the place. There was something rotting from the inside out.
Yeah.
I don't know. Not sure.
Yeah, I was just wondering. Maybe it was just something that George slipped in so that he'd have it if he needed it.
Yeah.
I feel sometimes he does that.
Yeah.
He also noticed how orderly everything is in Pycelle's room, and how many precious metal chains are on Pycelle's chains. So it's on Pycelle's Maester chains. Like, so he knows Pycelle is way more organized and way more intelligent than he lets on. So I think he knows that Pycelle is going to betray him even before. So he's just trying to win them over, I think. Yeah. So the big thing here, well, Bran is starting to look a lot better as well, and Lady Tanda she was after Littlefinger before, now she's after Tyrion. Yeah, poor Lolly. And then Alistair Thorne arrives in this chapter.
Yes, with a hand to see the hand.
Yeah. And he ignores him.
Yeah.
Well, he leaves him wait for a while anyway.
Yeah.
Which is disappointing.
It is. I don't know what happens with that. I can't ever remember
I think he comes before him, but the hand is all rotted.
Right, okay. And does he come before Tyrion or Joffrey?
I think it's Tyrion. I could be wrong. Maybe it's maybe it is Tyrion with Joffrey. I can't remember. We'll see. And then it's nice foreshadowing in this chapter for where we're going to begin with Tyrion 5, because Cersei's new favorite person is an alchemist that she keeps with her. So that's like instantly like Tyrion is like, okay, now I need to see these guys. So that's quite nice. And also just that we find out that Littlefinger is making a lot of money.
Yes.
And he claims to have taken both Tully girls' maidenheads.
Yes.
Which Tyrion instantly thinks is a lie. Do you think it's a lie?
Yeah, I think so. I think he's just, it's just all bravado, really, isn't it, with Littlefinger? I think that, Tyrion already in this chapter, I think, falls into that first trap of trying to manipulate Littlefinger by saying, I will show Lisa Tully who John Arryn's true killer.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so straight away Littlefinger's like, yeah, you don't know what you're doing. I thought it's quite funny, some of the, again, it's the very clever way that the author gives you insight into just small aspects of life, like how gossip spreads through King's Landing, and little sayings that pop up from time to time, that you get a sense of how things are communicated so quickly, but also just generally how people are feeling, so that and just how things get crunched down into just sound bites from the crowd, like drink with the dwarf, end up on the wall.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah. How brilliant would it have been if for some reason he just sent Littlefinger to the wall?
But it's already that kind of, well, you know what they say, drink with the dwarf, end up on the wall.
Actually, Littlefinger would probably be a good thing on the wall. So, but yeah, that is brilliant. I also thought when he gives Littlefinger Liege Lord of the Trident and Harrenhal, he's also promising Marcella to Robert Arryn, and it made me wonder if Littlefinger, if he's the actual father, there, then it would be very nice. That might even be a bigger bonus to have. Yeah. That might be the thing that really entices him, Marcella potentially marrying his son. I feel like Varys's quip about Tommen being the heir, and if anything happens to Joffrey, it'll be Tommen who's a sweet boy, blah blah blah. That's borderline treasonous. that conversation. I
Mm.
feel like that's a very that Varys is playing Tyrion there, because yeah, like obviously we know what's going to happen there with Joffrey. So yeah, that was I like with Pycelle. I think Tyrion may like what you were saying. I think he might think he's smarter than he actually is when it comes to these three.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I mean, again, this weird relationship between the siblings, the way that he refers to Cersei as beautiful and a goddess, and just like he just has really weird feelings towards his sister.
Also, I love the image of Cersei on a horse.
Yeah.
She's never on a horse in the show. Hey, P-Sand, how are you? Oh, thank you. This is my Baratheon top, and it's gone way too big for me, and also very faded. But sure, it'll do. It's one of those weekends where you've got to breathe. So yeah, so that's Tyrion 4, and we're into Sansa 2 then, unless you have anything else you want to say about Tyrion.
No. I mean, we get a continuation really in the next chapter.
Yeah,
the next couple of chapters with Tyrion. So with Sansa, this is the chapter where she goes to the Godswood, and she gets the letter, and she goes to the Godswood, and she bumps into Sir Dontos. So for me, this chapter is, I've made a note that for me, it felt like Sansa was more like Arya, or more like a Stark than ever before. You know, the way that she feels that she'd rather die than be tricked again, and she takes a knife, and she's just the way that it's describing her experiences so far of like, she keeps, I know that I feel like I have to be super defensive of Sansa, because a lot of people are, oh, she was naive, or she didn't know what she was doing, and she dropped her dad, and it's all Sansa's fault, blah, blah, blah. But if she was, she keeps getting slapped, so she can't control her tongue. So she's not as vapid as people think she is, because she must have some spirit there, because she cannot help herself, and she keeps getting
blood.
Yeah, she keeps getting, you know, whacked by the Kingsguard, and also in her own head, the feelings of being very suspicious of everybody. So from being extremely naive, and you know, the fairy tales, and that she's clearly, just by being so suspicious of everyone, not knowing who to trust, she's proving that she's not that naive. She also thinks about Arya in this chapter. And also when she goes to the Godswood, she feels the power of the Godswood, and she asks for a true knight to champion her. She also at the same time thinks of Lady when she's reaching for the knife. So again, it's that relationship, even though she's not here anymore. Maybe Sansa would have been a really powerful warg, you know, we don't know. She could have been one of the most powerful, but she takes strength from the memory of Lady when she's kind of reaching for a knife and making herself feel I mean, she has to force herself to do this. She's not as tomboyish as Arya. She hasn't got the same chutzpah as Arya's got, definitely. But I feel like that she's getting a kind of Starkness
mojo
in this, definitely in this chapter.
Joe.
Yeah, she's telling herself to be brave and to be strong. So we get the encounter with, she's immediately disappointed that it's Dontos, and also that it can't be happening tonight, like there and then. Again, she's kind of showing a child's naivety here of like, oh, can we get, you know, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Yeah. And it's like, this is something that can't happen overnight. And she tells herself again, you know, she has to be brave and strong and patient. And I've put in brackets like Lady. So again, it really felt as though there was an affinity in this chapter with her thinking, you know, the memory of her direwolf. And then at the end of the chapter, I've just got a few notes here of when she has the next encounter with the Hound, who's clearly had a drink, and he tells us the story of House Clegane, so we get to hear about how House Clegane was founded and what the story was behind that. Tytos, who was Tywin's father, and he was about to be attacked by a lion. So the way I read this is that lioness that we've got at the moment is Cersei. In this encounter, in this story of how House Clegane was founded, it was a lioness who attacked Tytos. So basically, a female lion who was threatening to bring down the entire house. So that makes me think, wouldn't it be poetic? And I know the world and his wife has got a theory on who the Valonqar is, and anyone who's a younger son. But wouldn't that be poetic if the kind of roots and the origins of the foundations of House Clegane were built on a lioness that was trying to basically destroy House Lannister? Now we've got a lioness who potentially can destroy House Lannister, and we've also got a younger son in Sandor Clegane.
Yeah.
So that, just after reading this chapter, Sandor has gone way up in the stakes for me of Valonqar, just because of the history of the foundations. And I just another final observation from me on this chapter is when Sandor says to Sansa, "A hound will die for you, but will never lie to you." Is that foreshadowing Sandor eventually sacrificing himself for Sansa? And that line about, everyone's liars, and they're all liars here, everyone's better than you. And it just reminded me of how the Hound was robbed of that line in the TV show. Yes. And it's like, oh God, yeah, I've forgotten that.
Yeah. I think they did film it though.
No, it was in, but it was Littlefinger who said it in the show.
Ah, okay, because this scene is on a DVD extra.
No, it was when they're in the throne room, and she's been like, I think it was when Marjorie comes forward.
Okay.
And Sansa walks off, and Littlefinger follows her, and he has this conversation about how exactly that everyone's a liar.
Because there's this scene where they do meet in the hallway, and he says he'll have his song. That was cut out of the show, but it's on a DVD. It's on an extra somewhere. Yeah, that is a shame. I feel like I like your theory about the lioness, and I think it makes sense. And I wonder, will what Cersei has done to the mountain play a role in that as well?
Yeah,
because even though he won't really care what happens to the mountain, it is robbing him of his vengeance on his true brother, if you like.
It's one of the favourite theories, and a lot of people tend to think that it's either little brother Tyrion, obviously, or the fact that Jaime was born after her, wasn't he, holding her ankle or something like that. And it goes backwards and forwards between this a brother of Cersei's. I think aside from this, this kind of new Sandor, that's kind of would tie in quite poetically. The other theory that I heard, which was one of my favourites at the time, is just the way she presented it. She doesn't do Game of Thrones YouTube anymore, but Bardi Porto.
Oh yeah.
She did one of her first videos ever was a theory on the little brother being Edmure Tully.
That'd be so good. Oh my God, that would be so good. Especially the actor on the show who I fucking love.
Yeah.
That would be so good.
Yeah, it would.
Yeah.
I mean, but again, every second character is somebody's little brother. So
yeah, and it could be that it'll be misinterpreted, or there'll be some other kind of interpretation of that prophecy. It is a self-fulfilling prophecy, though.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's not. It is the Macbeth prophecy.
yes,
Yeah. I
absolutely.
teach Macbeth, and I regularly reference Cersei's prophecy, and everybody gets it.
That's a big feature of Cersei's character entirely. Is she is a self-fulfilling prophecy. She's making things happen because she's so obsessed with the prophecies. But yeah. What did you get?
So for me, I've a couple of questions. Sansa seems to be able to get around a lot easily. Like, I mean, I don't think she could escape, but I just wonder, are they just too preoccupied to keep a close eye on her now? Or is there somebody else behind Dantos helping her? Is Littlefinger already behind him at this stage helping her?
Oh,
because like the letter getting under her door and stuff. I mean, Dantos couldn't do that on his own.
He was recruited immediately with Littlefinger. Seen that, okay, there's potentially a connection here. I mean, what is there in this for Dantos? He wants to ultimately be a knight again. And in a way, there was even that kind of mock, she sort of reunites him in a weird way, where she says, "Rise, sir," and then Dantos even says like a little bit of a vow. I mean, it's not as clear as it is in other, it's not, I wouldn't say it's like official that he's now a knight, but it's almost like, the Littlefinger's playing people who have sympathies or weaknesses, and these two are actually quite good characters to put together, because she feels sorry for him and he feels obliged to her. I think Littlefinger's behind all of this, all of it.
So with that in mind, then is it because of what Tyrion gives him that he plays this hand now? Because he probably knows that, okay, well, if I'm going to be Liege Lord of the Trident and I'm going to have Lysa, I'm going to get like the Eyrie, I'm going to be out of here pretty soon. King's Landing, like, the funds are going to be drying up soon. I can't bleed the people any further than I'm already bleeding them. So I need to be able to get out with Sansa.
Yeah.
Very quickly. So this is what I did. Like, I think you're totally right. And I think he knows that she loves the fairy tales and all that kind of thing. Hey John, how's it going? I think it's a brilliant companion chapter to the Arya chapter that we're getting next. And we have to do some like bowing down to the romantic elements in the fandom and talk about shipping Sansa and the Hound, because we'll talk about shipping Arya and Gendry in the next chapter. But shipping Sansa and the Hound, and obviously LaDonna talks a lot about this.
Sansa.
Do you see it happening, Sansa?
No, I think he has feelings for her. She doesn't have feelings for him.
I think he's way too old on the show for it ever to happen. I think the age difference between them on the show is enough to say it's not going to happen for me.
Yeah. I think it's more like P. Sand was saying, that it's the show really diminishes the connection between Sansa and Sandor. I agree with that. I think there is more of a subtle connection in the books, definitely.
And I think that like, we don't really have romance stories in, like, all the romance stories we have are dead. Drogo and Dany are the biggest romance story. Cat and Ned, maybe. Rhaegar and Lyanna, like the Jaime and Cersei, like they're all dead. Like, I don't know. I would like to think there's a romance coming, but I don't see how it's possible for Jon in the books at this stage. I don't think the show is. I don't know. Maybe, but I don't think I don't think we're going to get it with Sandor and Sansa. At one stage, I think maybe I liked the idea, but now I'm not. I like the idea of him being a protector, though. I like the idea of him looking after her and they're connected.
Yeah.
I think they should have. I hope they have another meetup.
Well, the idea of the romance feeds into this concept of what's a true knight and not, and that goes through the entire series. This idea about vows and honor and what the concept of a true knight is, and we get some of the most sympathetic characters to the readers and the readership are the Hound, and I mean, for me personally, Brienne too. So
yes,
they're two characters that again feature in this chunk of chapters that we're looking at here, and you get that fleeting thing about who is a true knight actually, what qualities, what vows. It's not just about and Jamie talks about it later on about what the vows mean, and that really it's just a whole load
so
of
I've got a new one.
Never meet those vows.
Briandor.
Briandor.
P-San says no to Sansa. I need to put that on a t-shirt. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I don't really have much else. I think a lot of people are anti-Sansa because they think she's, I guess, playing the damsel in distress card a bit too much. And I think, if anything, when Sandor says, a hound will look you in the eye and tell you what's what, I feel like it is, like you said, her wolf's blood is starting to reawaken and all that kind of thing. And it's always there on the surface anyway, just below the surface with Sansa. So I think she's still young and she's still struggling to let go of a narrative that was so much part of her identity and the forging of who she thought she was going to be.
Yeah.
So I found the whole Dantas thing, I don't know, there's something about it I didn't like, and maybe it's because I know what happens to him and it's just horrible. But yeah, I'm after writing something there now. Oh yes, the song, when he says to her about I'll get my song one way or another. Is Sansa the only main POV character that song is really a part of their narrative? It's it comes up a few times with her, this idea of a song, and I just wonder, because obviously a song of ice and fire, I just wonder, is there something to that, what that song means? Sansa is one of my top picks to get the throne. I think she is the one that could take it in the end. So will that be the song? That idea that she is the song at the end, kind of.
Yeah, maybe. I'm just trying to think of any other characters that are inclined.
I mean, Rhaegar. There's music.
Yeah.
But yeah, Kisan says Sansa stand for life. This is something that I've seen in the fandom as well. That I'm not sure about. What do you think of that?
What, Sansa and Stannis?
Yeah.
Yeah, why not?
Really?
I do like Stannis, and he deserves.
Oh my God, poor Sansa.
He deserves some happiness in his life.
God, Sansa does too, though.
Yeah.
Sure, her grammar is good. She might get away.
I think the words are there. A hound will die for you, but will never lie to you. I think he is prepared to. He's kind of. There's something there. There's a connection there for him in his mind. He probably doesn't want to acknowledge it, or he thinks that nothing will ever happen. I mean, look at him, look at her, and I think that he ultimately will end up sacrificing himself for her somehow, or saving her somehow really heroically, and it'll be there you go, Sansa, there was your true knight.
You said he just P-San said no, I meant I'm a huge Sansa fan. All right, Sansa fan for life.
Right.
Let Sansa stand for that. But that theory is
Now
out
you've just
there.
created a brand new, yes.
It is out there.
Stand.
There are people that ship Stannis and Sansa, and it's really weird. Yeah, the other thing that I got from this chapter, just going into the Arya chapter, is that she thinks Arya is already at home in Winterfell, and like we go into this Arya chapter, and it feels like she's getting further and further from Winterfell, especially when we get into the next Arya, which is yeah. But yeah, that's all I have for Sansa. And John just threw up a little with Stannis and Stannis and Sansa. Stannis. Okay. Oh, Stan is in the Eminem song, Stan. Oh, okay. All right. So Arya 5.
Yes.
Great chapter. Great chapter.
Again, lots of, you know, kind of action packed, really. She's free for the first time of, you know, no parental control or adults around her, but it's real edge of seat stuff. What's going to happen next? Where's she going to go? What's going to happen? And then they all get captured by the end of the chapter. But again, very rich in terms of the landscape and what Arya's facing here. So everywhere is burned. It's horrific. You hear about this later on in Tyrion's chapter, where Cleos Frey is telling Tyrion how bad it really is in the Riverlands. Corpses everywhere. This smell of rotten fish in the air. So like Tully, you know, we had some like rotten fish, Tully, bodies in the lake. So you get this smell of rotten fish and then the smell of dead men. These bloated corpses eaten by the crows, and it's just absolutely horrific. And they're starving. They've got no food. And Lomi has got he took an injury in the battle, and it's
Can I just say now, I'm glad Lomi is dead. He's really annoying.
Just the description of his death actually was very kind of like, there you go, that's done.
I felt like that was fan service by the end of that chapter.
Yeah.
Like, oh, good. Pain in the arse. Best line of this chapter is when he's going on about yielding, and when Arya leaves again, he says, "What if the wolves come?" And she's just like, "Yield."
Yeah, perfect. But you get that. I mean, you've got to remember, put in terms of the context, that she is younger than Sansa, and she's effectively a child. And you get this feeling in her own mind that she has been let down by adults, including her own parents. I mean, she says that she feels that she wanted to kick Yoren for being an idiot and dying, you know, you stupid, you know, and it's, you know, so there's that, like, it's really sad that she feels let down by adults. But I mean, look at the adults that she's experienced.
She's so disassociated from what death means.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if the finality of death fully registers with her, because she still has Sirio's words going round and round in her head, and thoughts of Ned, and it's like, as long as they're in her head, and even Yoren then later on, oh, they can't see you piss, all this kind of thing. Like, it's almost like she keeps them alive in her head for some reason. P-San says there's so much more death in Arya's chapters than I realized when I first read it years ago. It's constant, yeah. And there's one scene where she's going in where all the Lannister men are, and they're making meat or pie or something, and the smell of the food mixes with the smell of the death, and she doesn't know whether she's going to throw up or if she's hungry, or like, it's just really awful, really awful,
vile. So in this chapter as well, you get this sense of, and I remember reading the Arya chapters in their in sequence in their entirety before doing the Mercy video with Tony Teflon years ago now, and I remember stumbling across in this chapter the beginning of what I see, that definitely that disassociation, but also there's this kind of split personality forming almost, with a lot of the time in her own narrative, she says things like, one part of me wanted to do this, but another part of me wanted to do that. And it's kind of like she's already, lots of things seem very separate. You know, she didn't know whether she wanted to do this or whether she wanted to kill it or whether she wanted to eat it or whether she wanted this or whether she wanted that. And it's, there's a lot of that with Arya, and it's that sort of like, almost, she feels, out of all the characters that we're reading through at the moment, it feels to me like Arya is the most comfortable with deconstructing her own personality, if that makes sense, even at this really early stage. But there are things, so there's always going to be that one part of her wanted to be a Stark, and you get those, you know, and those kind of old connections and feelings that she has for a family, that so when she feels protective over the little girl, over little Weasel, but at the same time she's really pissed off with her, she's really irritated by her. So it's this kind of like, you know, she's constantly seems to be in two minds. This is the chapter again where Gendry and Arya have the conversation, where Gendry reveals, look, I know that you're not a boy, and how that goes. And again, you get this sense of like, you know, the higher ups and the, you know, the landed gentry right down through to like, you know, I don't know how, I don't even know how to talk to you anymore. I don't know how to address you anymore. How do I, you know, and she's like, for God's sake, just don't, you know, don't blow my cover. But there's also in this chapter a real sense of the old gods, I felt. So she's talking about, and again, where they're located, this is all happening all very close to the God's Eye, which is where the Children of the Forest and the Order of the Green Men and the Grove of Ancient Weirwoods, you know, so it's this concentration of old gods' power, I think, and she feels it in this chapter. She says she feels the lake is calling to her, that's like surrounds the God's Eye, and she's given up shoes now. She has she likes the feeling of the barefoot in the earth, and again, to me, that just is like that, it's akin to the old gods, and it's that connection with the old gods. So there was a big sense of that for me in this chapter. It's that connection again back to the old gods and the first men.
Yeah, just what you were saying there about her deconstructing. Can I hear myself? About them deconstructing her. Or take out my earphones because I can hear myself. About them deconstructing her character. I feel like she really loses who she is as Arya Stark when she loses Needle. It's almost like that, like she needs that physical contact with Needle. And the shame of that, of losing Needle at the end of the chapter, is way stronger than the fear of the Lannister men who capture her.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just one of those things that, I feel as well like she takes on another identity in this chapter as well, becoming, was it Arya Wormface or something? What do they call her? For eating the worms.
Oh yeah,
yeah. It's like she's constantly taken on new identities, even in a micro sense, like identities that come and go all the time. So I totally get what you're saying there about her kind of breaking herself down. She thinks about Sansa a couple of times in this chapter as well. If Sansa, she thinks about Sansa maybe screaming at her because she was eating bugs, but also Sansa would recognize her now. She'd be one of the few people that would still recognize her, which is really sad, actually, when you think about it. But she's one of the few people that would recognize her, but she wouldn't say anything. Like, she'd still ignore her. And that sense that she still feels that she'd be no one to Sansa is really hard to read. And it's not just with Yoren kicking him. She wishes the poacher hadn't died because they needed him.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like, she's not sad that he died. She's sad that they don't have the poacher anymore.
Yeah.
So everything is super practical.
Yeah.
She's totally in survival mode as
Well,
we've
yeah,
talked about
completely
before.
survival mode. Yeah, yeah.
But
then they get captured.
Yeah, she can't leave behind that idea that she is still like a lady, or like she can't, like she still doesn't really understand how the world works, because with Lomi, she asks, should they go get a Meister? And then they say, well, Meisters are already in castles. Like it is never really registered with her or me. What do small folk do?
Well, it will be probably like herbs and plants and very old, very old way of kind
They'd
of like
have their own kind of people.
Yeah, they'll probably have like a village alchemist, but a very sort of,
Yeah,
that's
level. What I was thinking. Would it be an alchemist? Because we find out later on that the Maesters replaced the alchemists in Tyrion's chapter. Just because we discussed Sansa and Sandor, do we ship Gendry and Arya?
No. I'm very adamant about this.
Why?
Because
I'm not questioning you. I'm just interested to know why you're adamant.
I think I always think about how Arya is likened to Lyanna, and I don't believe that this kind of tomboyish self-determination, strong, independent woman, Stark kind of thing is the whole, Rhaegar swooped her off her feet and it was all this kind of romantic. I think what happened between Rhaegar and Lyanna could have been, we need to help each other. We need to be friends. We need to be allies. I think there was a connection between them, but I don't necessarily think it was romantic. And I think we're kind of seeing this with Arya and Gendry. She respects him, and there's always going to be that notion of, adolescent curiosity and feelings of like, having a crush and what have you. But I just don't think that they're ever going to, I just don't think they're ever going to end up together. I think this is a tale of, males and females can be friends and they can help each other, and it can be something where they're in it for just genuine affection and friendship, rather than it being they have to be romantic and end up getting married. And I just don't like the idea of it.
I don't think he plays that. He doesn't play that card.
No, and she's also, everything about Arya has been that's not her. She's not the lady of the castle. She's not, she's going to go her own way, and that doesn't include marriage.
I don't ship them because I don't think Arya survives the series.
No.
So that's why. So unless Gendry becomes a direwolf or something, I don't think we're going to get Arya.
Yeah.
Unless she wargs into Nymeria and lives out her days as a wolf. That's how I kind of see her going. She just is consumed by Nymeria's identity. And as P-Sand says, oh, hi, Ion. And as P-Sand says, Arya's too young for that stuff. I mean, she's going to be probably in her early teens by the end of the series. And we'll all be in our bloody 90s. But I don't think she's going to make it.
Arya's a faceless god nun. Yeah, I don't think that, I can't see her sort of settling down and, being family orientated and settling down with a strong Gendry who'll be able to protect her. No, she can protect herself. Back off, Gendry.
So the message coming from Clare and myself tonight is Valentine's can feck off. There's no love.
No.
In died with Drogo.
There's no bittersweet. It's bitter.
Yeah. God. There isn't one loving. Are there any loving relationships left? Gilly and Sam?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
We need one. Jesus.
Yeah.
Come on, Claire.
Fair enough.
Let's go Gillian style. All right. So yeah, that's Arya. I was just thinking about what lies ahead of them. Like this is like her Lord of the Flies chapter, and now we're going into God the depths of hell.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so horrible what's coming. I think it's really it is her and Tyrion's book, like this Clash of Kings.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pisan agrees with me about Arya dies. Pisan said maybe if there was still a 5-year jump as Gurm had attended, but Arya never thinks of romance in a positive way. I agree. She doesn't really think that. Again, though, that might be in favor of something happening with someone later, you know? I mean, she doesn't look like she'd be very good at cooking, so maybe she should go back to hot pie. No. Yeah, so that's it for Arya. And then we move on. We're back with Tyrion in King's Landing. And I think this chapter in particular shows how intelligent he is, just planning ahead with the pots and stuff. I loved the beginning of this chapter, begin with the alchemists and the way they what do they call each other? Wisdom or something? And it's just so fascinating, that whole world. I'd love, like, not now, George, but later, I'd love like a little graphic novel of just based around this group, because they sound hilarious and really dangerous.
After this chapter, I'm absolutely fascinated by who they are, what their origins are. Do they really know how to make more wildfire? Who taught them to do this? I've just got a million questions after reading this.
My biggest question was, well, because I completely forgot, was when Tyrion says that they used to be the biggest guild until the maesters replaced them everywhere. So does that mean that there were alchemists before at all the castles everywhere? And what does that mean for you know, how things used to operate in terms of magic and science?
Right, let me just say, tinfoil time. I think that the alchemists, just from reading this chapter, I think that let's think about it this way. They have these pompous titles, wisdom. So there's this air of secrecy about them. The title of alchemist is an inherited title, so it's like my father's father's father, you know, it runs it, and that doesn't happen with the Meisters or any other order, actually. And usually when you get that kind of setup, that means it's because there's a massive secret that you can only trust your own progeny to be able to, you know. So, I mean, I don't know so much about the kind of acolytes that are under them or whatever, and whether or not there are different stages of like knowing whatever the secrets are. But I think, okay, you've got, to me, wildfire seems like a magical substance.
Yeah.
Magical substances, to me, old gods, children of the forest, manipulating fire, earth, nature, that kind of thing. So I've put here in my notes, could this be questions I've got? So do we know... They're talking about the numbers here. We've got this amount of unstable pots, this amount in total. So there are, of the old jars that are unstable and very flammable, there are about just nearly 8,000, including half of those from Ares' time. And 200 of those were found under the Sept of Baelor. So immediately, to me, that's a connection between the faith and wildfire. Wildfire, again, being a magical substance, equals old gods. And I've just going back to my crazy theory from last week, is this evidence, is the fact that they were stored under the Sept of Baelor and all of this stuff goes back to Ares' time, is this evidence that, oh, the old gods' magic and the new faith of the Seven are somehow connected? Like, we will trade off secrets of how to manipulate fire and wildfire if you accept this new religion that's been invented, where it's actually paying homage to the old gods rather than, you know, that idea of hiding the old religion inside the new religion. Maybe the wildfire tricks and things like that and secrets were some sort of payoff trade, because just of the proximity, the location of when he comes out, and just everything about it, actually. The the hand of King Aerys was a pyromancer. What they say, wildfire runs through the veins of the alchemist. Again, that kind of, you know, you can inherit these secrets. So I've got, like, you know, what else can they do? Where does the magic come from? What is this polished black floor on the way out as Tyrion's leaving? And just where they're located, the Guild of Pyromancers is located right by the Sept of Baelor. I think there's some connection there.
So, and they even...
I mean, that's just a load of questions, really.
Yeah, but I know. I have loads of questions on them. Yeah. And even Tyrion thinks like that they lit some of the wildfires he's going in as torches, I think, or they light it, and he's like, that's just a show for me. No doubt they'll put that out as soon as I go. And it's like, wow, they like this is the most dangerous substance on Earth that we know, like, apart from a dragon. So, like, how I know George actually was inspired by historic weaponry for this. Some fire that was used in ancient, I want to say it's Greece. But yeah, so I know there's some, but I definitely agree. There's definitely something else going on with it. There's definitely some magical, but there's so many questions, like, where are the mothers of these guys? Where are the wives? Like what's going on?
It wouldn't surprise me if actually they don't know, or they've lost the knowledge of how to make it, how to manipulate it, and that's why they have this elevated sense of importance of, like, calling themselves wisdom, because it's like, you will never be able to understand this and that. Yeah, but actually what that is a cover for the fact that they don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to make more. They don't know how to control it. It's just this thing that they've been given that is used to be hugely important, but they've lost all these. I don't trust this guy. I don't trust this Haldane, and I also am really quite, I mean, I know when we saw it in the TV show, when the wildfire blew up the set, just that episode, and just it was like, I can remember the bell flying off the front of the building, and it was like, oh my god. And there are 4,000 pots of very unstable and flammable. They don't know how to depot it out of one pot into something else that's it's seeping through. So it's like a ticking time bomb. It's only a matter of time before this is just going to, it's too volatile.
By the way, I would like to be addressed as Wisdom from now on. I'll call you Wisdom. Wisdom. It is kind. It's
pompous, isn't it? I think it's hiding something. Yeah.
No, there's something. There is something wrong there, and I wonder, do, like, the Maesters also have this knowledge? Because if they were supplanted by the Maesters, there may have been crossover there. And there's something with the Maesters, because, well, I'll talk about it when we get to Cat as well. Something Renly says about the Maesters being obsessed with blood and nobody else is. So yeah, we'll talk about the Maesters and all that. So I just think there's so many things that show that Tyrion is doing a good job in this. I love the idea of him taking pots and filling them with green paint, and anyone who has green paint on them, if they're out, get them out. They're not allowed to pour this stuff, and then kind of get up to lamp oil and all that kind of thing. And also I love what he does with Cleos Frey when Cleos arrives. He said none of those men are allowed into the city. No one can see King's Landing. And this for me is like, it's the biggest question I've always had in terms of Stannis and Renly, and even Robb, but Stannis and Renly in particular. How do they not know how bad things are in King's Landing? Why haven't they, like, they must know loads of people in King's Landing. And even if they don't have their own spies there, or like informants or whatever, like people can still leave King's Landing, and King's Landing is so bad. Why aren't there people leaving to go and join Stannis or Renly and say, listen, we're here because people are starting to eat one another. Like literally starting to eat one another, and the place is falling apart. So you could take King's Landing very easily.
I think people, you know, wisely or unwisely, just flock to the capital for safety, don't they? They feel that, you know, the royal defences will keep them safe. But
I think though this is like I feel like when we get to the cat chapter as well, I think she rightly points out, well, Renly does not have his finger on the pulse here. Like he's bloody organising tourneys. Stannis is clearly just completely feels so entitled to the position of king. He's just so riled up with Renly that he's going to deal with Renly first. But in reality, if either one of them had gone to King's Landing at this point, they would have taken it easily.
Yeah.
And it's just, they wouldn't have been, like Tyrion's plans would not have been ready. And Tyrion knows this, and he's the only one who seems to realize this, that like we are so vulnerable right now. And even if we have to use wildfire at the risk of blowing ourselves up, the people are going to tear themselves apart now anyway if we don't do something. So we might as well start practicing the chain and everything. But the only other thing that I had with this is do you think he should be a bit more strict with the types of people that are allowed to speak on the street? The way religious fervor has been kind of worked up by certain people on the street. I just wonder, is there I think like Joffrey or Cersei, had they heard what that guy was saying to people about? I just wonder how dangerous is that?
The problem is some of it he kind of believes himself. I know that, you know, he's obviously horribly offended by being referred to as a twisted demon monkey, but he also is very aware that there's massive corruption there with the High Septon, who that quote of he's so pious and you know, wants to kind of pray to the gods so much that he has a meal for every one of the 7 gods.
Yeah, that's great.
So I think these are isolated incidents. I think, you know, we haven't got anything like a mass congregation of poor brothers arriving at the Sept of Baelor yet.
I guess,
got these isolated incidents of begging brothers and weird kind of prophets that you would expect in a capital. But I think
it is much worse that he's letting Joffrey bloody shout down to people, like, you know, with his, you know, go down with bow and arrow and stuff. Like, that's way worse.
Yeah. There's a sense of growing unease just everywhere, and it's not just about the hunger. I don't think there is just this general sense of like it's like everybody knows that there's going to be a huge battle and a huge war, and just the whole realm seems to have cracked and fractured. This growing sense of
P-Sand says Renly takes his time as he's just waiting for others to deplete each other's forces, and Stannis just can't get over Renly bending the knee. Yeah. Renly's plan would have worked if not for that pesky demon shadow baby. Yeah, that's coming up pretty soon, actually. How fucked would King's Landing have been without Tyrion?
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, totally. I wonder.
Which is probably exactly why Tywin sent him.
What do you think? Would Tywin be doing much the same as Tyrion? Or would he be rounding up people? And I don't know.
He's planning ahead. Tyrion's planning ahead, which is a very kind of Tywin thing to do. He probably would have been doing similar things, actually.
I think Tywin would never have let Joffrey out near people. He would definitely not be.
I think he would have done the same thing with the kind of investment in terms of Marcella, especially Marcella.
Yes.
I mean, Aaron in sending Tommen to the Eyrie is like, ugh, you don't really know what you're going to get with that. You really don't know what you're going to get, because there's just too many possibilities of what could happen there. But I also think
that was never going to happen. He was never going to send anyone to the Eyrie.
I think sending Marcella to Dawn at this stage is a genius idea from Tyrion, because because you've got, if you think of that, like logistically and geographically where they are, Renly's kind of marching up towards King's Landing, and then you've got effectively what it's trying to do is this sort of rear guard of Dawn being able to kind of poke at Renly's forces. So it's very clever. Plus, obviously, the swearing fealty through the potential of this royal marriage. With
how much of that is political and how much of it is protective. I feel like Marcella is a favorite almost of Tyrion's, and it's almost to keep her safe. It's not. It's probably killing two birds with one stone. It will keep her safe. He'll never get. He can't take away Tommen. He can't take away the heir. But and he doesn't give a shit what happens to Joffrey. So, and I think, and it's really like, I mean, even though Cersei just completely like rejects his compassion, it is like Cersei definitely loves Marcella. It is heartbreaking. She knows he's right. She knows, but it's basically,
I think it is a
good way the only good person in her life. Like Tommen is still too young. Marcella is so good. She's just a pure soul. I think Tommen is as well, but as they said, he's easily led. So she's just a pure soul, and it's I think it's hard for Cersei to send her away, because she'll have no females around her now. Like there's she doesn't have any kind of so it is very upsetting when
but I think it's a clever political move, but I think also there is an element of, let's get her out of here, things are kicking off, and it's gonna there's a sense of real mounting doom where they're talking about being Renly's troops reaching King's Landing before like the end of that day, and then obviously we know that's not going to happen because they're having too much fun on this holiday camp on the Rose Road. So
and P-Sand said that they know she will be a hostage, so Marcella will be a hostage in Dorne, so relatively safe, but as a female she'll also be an affordable loss. And I think Sansa, it's not great for Sansa, but she's safe at the moment where she is.
Being a highborn hostage isn't such a bad situation to be in, really.
It's not. I mean, Theon Greyjoy, I mean, he was treated pretty well by the start. So I think it's definitely the best place. It's a pity they didn't send Tommen as well. But they couldn't do that. But I wonder. Yeah, I wonder, would Tywin have done it? She probably would already be gone if Tywin was there. I'm guessing. So yeah, that's it for Tyrion, unless you have anything else. Of course, he knows now that he's got Pycelle as well, but he should have known that from the first chapter that we looked at today. But yeah, I think that's it. I have.
Move on to Bran.
Yeah, I had something there. Is Tyrion given D too much what? I have no idea what that note meant. But anyway. So we have Bran 3. Love this chapter as well. This is a great chapter.
Yes.
There's so many. This and the cat chapter work really well together, actually.
Yeah.
So they're having the feast. This is we've gone from 2 famines to 2 feasts now.
Yes. Yeah. So much food. So there's a few memorable lines in this from the interactions with the Northern men at Winterfell. I mean, one of my initial questions at the beginning of this chapter is, if we know that Rob's just, you know, kind of stagnating where he is at the moment, and the Riverland troops are kind of melting away and going back to their own, you know, their own castles and what have you. So I suppose my question is, why don't the northern men that are at Winterfell just go and join Rob's troops?
Well,
And
you see, you see, this is the thing. It's autumn. There's so much harvesting to do. Like they can't. Like you've got the mountain and the Lannisters burning all the harvests in the Riverlands.
Yeah.
So the North are going to need that quicker than anyone else. Like they're going to need that stockpile of food.
Yeah.
So that's what I bet there's like women and children and any men that are left are out just harvesting. So it's probably
there seems to be a lot of them. These last few chapters of with Bran and all of the northern, you know, not all of them are there. Obviously, the Boltons aren't there, but there's quite a few that are there.
I mean, as the war moves south, like even now, where we are in the series going into Winds, like it is like the North in a lot of ways might be better prepared because it should have a lot of grain and it should have a lot of stuff. It might have been part of Rob's the advice Rob got was like, okay, listen, if we're going to be sitting here anyway, we might as well send a load of people back and start harvesting because we can't let anybody get up there and burn everything.
Yeah.
So and it's so big as well. Like especially when we get into the next Theon chapter, that's going to be a big thing. Like, yeah, we'll talk about that next week. But yeah, the idea of the North and how big it is and what it takes to actually run that. That's why I don't understand. Like, Renly has so many more men now at this stage. It's got High Garden and all that kind of thing, but the North is so underpopulated compared to other parts of the realm. I guess it's all hands on deck, even though it's like feast after feast after feast. But Pisan said, wouldn't it need to be an order from Rob as well? Also, I think Gurm is saving numbers for later in the story.
Yeah, that makes sense. It just felt as though in this chapter, at the beginning of the chapter, there was so many of them there, and they're all like, you know, congratulating Rob and talking about, and it's like, well, why are you, you know, just go and join him, help out. But that makes sense. There's a few things here that there's just this notion of pacts and agreements and just so many things that will never be fulfilled. They're just impossible. And somebody mentions the agreement with the phrase about the crossing, and one of those things, which, you know, I forget about this all the time, that Arya was promised to a Frey, to marry a Frey, and Bran just kind of laughs and says Arya will never marry a Frey. Yeah, no shit, that's never going to happen.
Probably kill the one she was supposed to marry.
All of these agreements and pacts and alliances, and you know, half of them are based on things that are just, even if you wanted them to be true, they would never ever happen. And again, I think you've got to contrast that with some of the pacts and agreements and alliances that we know have happened in the past, and you know, broken agreements and broken alliances, and where all this could have started going wrong. But kind of foreshadowing Bran's journey throughout the rest of the series, where he just feels uncomfortable with everybody there. He's saying that he feels as though he's seeing everything, but he's a part of nothing. That's just so Bran. And he just feels they're in the middle of the feast, and he just feels like it's too hot, it's too noisy, and it's like, don't worry, Bran, because very soon you're going to be somewhere where it's really not hot and it's very quiet. There won't be a lot of noise. He seems to be able to slip into summer when he's just daydreaming now. He doesn't have to be like in a full dream. There seems to be these waking dreams where he just kind of slips You know, he's kind of he's there in the middle of the feast, and he's just daydreaming.
Do you think that's helped by the fact that Jojen getting closer and closer to him as well?
Probably, again, yeah, that proximity in terms of magic. Wow, so we get the reeds being introduced in this chapter.
I love it.
So the frog eaters, the mudmen. So we get Mira and Jojen. And again, you've got to think about this from the point of view of Bran as a young boy. Immediate crush on Mira. He can't take his eyes off her. He seems to be absolutely fascinated by Mira. But also the description of Jojen as being all in green. Even his leather boots are green, and he's got these moss-coloured eyes. And the fealty that they swear to the king in the north. So let's break it down. We swear by earth and water, and that's Jojen who says that. To me, that's the old gods. We swear it by bronze and iron, and that's Mira who says that. And again, first men, old gods, first men. And then finally, they both say together, we swear it by ice and fire. Which is, so I've just got that as old gods, first men, magic. Which is obvious. That's, you know, they worship the old gods. They clearly have some kind of connection with the children of the forest that's on a deeper level than other humans have had throughout history. And maybe this family is the living, breathing ancestors of the first men that still have that very, very close connection on a, you know, on a kind of visceral level almost with the old gods and the first men and the magic that's associated, so the magical abilities. So yeah.
Jojen and Mira put on their disco outfits and swear by the fire. I like the alliteration of the gifts they bring. Fish, frog, and fowl.
Yes.
I am interested in the kinds of people they are. Little Walder says that they are thieves and cravens. And even, and this isn't just prejudice on his part. Bran says they're known as cowardly people that fight with poisoned weapons and hide from their enemies. And I wonder, will this feed into the story of Tower of Joy and how Howland Reed defeated Arthur Dane? Because he talks later on about that story later, and how Ned would get very sad when he told the story of Arthur Dane and Dawn and Howland Reed saving him, and like why would you get, like, I can understand why you get sad. Death is terrible, and Ned wasn't the greatest crack, but yeah, it's just there's something to how that story ended that Ned isn't proud of, I think. Or
I think they are smaller in stature than the average human, considerably, and I think you could look at them and say, "Oh yeah, they're a cowardly group of people." Or you could say, well, they're at a massive disadvantage because everybody else around them is huge. So actually they have to be quite proactive and use their guile to either weave some kind of old magic because they've got this closer relationship to the old gods and the first men, or they just have to be sneaky. They just have to be sneakier about things.
And that's what they do later on, isn't it? They're like, his men, all the Cranach men at the neck are kind of they're taking out Lannisters. Yeah.
Well, the fact that Greywater Watch just you can't it dissipates. It's like the Bermuda Triangle. It just vanishes and then appears somewhere. You know, it's like it floats around. You can't actually put your finger on where it's located. That speaks volumes, I think, of the whole. You know, the culture of the Crannogmen of like they have to hide, they have to, and it's not because they're nasty, cowardly creatures, it's because that's what they've been dealt. They've got this, you know, they are at a massive disadvantage. What can they use? What they can use is this connection and this the power that they're able to maybe manipulate more than anybody else, possibly because of proximity to the old gods and the first men. So Jojen seems to have this magical appearance already. Obviously, we know later on in the story that he's a green seer. And in this chapter, we get Bran having a wolf dream of something that's actually happening, which is the reeds meeting the wolves.
Yeah.
And Jojen reaching out. Now, again, I'd totally forgotten about this, because all I can remember is how this was portrayed in the TV show, which was like, you know,
woods,
first time they meet them, and it's like, you know, and Jojen interacts with Summer straight away. But this is through a dream. So, and Jojen asks, he wants to see the direwolves. As soon as they've done their swearing, the earth, wind, and fire, he wants to see the direwolves. And then Bran has this dream, and then he kind of wakes up at the point where Jojen reaches out to touch the wolf. So is there something about Jojen's magic and that reaching out and touching Bran in the state of being warged in Summer? Did it trigger him to kind of like pull out of that situation? I don't know. It just seemed like something. That was a really weird interaction there, because Jojen and Mira meet the direwolves, but we only know that through the dream.
So I thought Bran was warging Summer at that stage. He was Summer.
Yes.
So yeah. So it's actually happening. It's not like they're in. I guess. Oh yeah. I was going to say it's not like they're in his dream, but if he's dreaming and warging at the same time, then technically they are in his dreams, I guess.
So Jojen is reaching out to Summer, just again, like physical contact, reaching out to Summer. Bran is Summer at that point. Summer doesn't seem scared, doesn't seem, you know, it seems like if it continued and there wasn't this trigger to move out, that Jojen would have just patted him on that, or done what, I don't know, whatever. Maybe there is something about contact. But it just seemed strange that as soon as Jojen reached to touch Summer, immediately Bran fell out of the dream, or fell out of the warging dream, and was spinning and falling, and it's like, what does that mean?
So they say that Howland sent them. I think Jojen says our father sent us. Did he? And if he did, okay, I get swearing fealty, but he doesn't really need to send his children. He could just send a messenger. So I'm wondering, does Howland know of what the powers that Jojen has? Like, what's going on between him sending?
No, it's known, isn't it? Because Jojen, it must be, because Jojen says to Mira, "Can you hear that? Can you, and you know, can you feel the obviously some kind of magical vibe?" And she's just like, "No." So he's obviously the one that's got the ability. I'm certain his father would have known that. There are all sorts of crazy theories.
There are crazy theories out there, like that Jojen is Howland, and like
he's kind of
crazy theories.
Like face changing something. It's just So I don't know. Honestly, it's that.
He's the most interesting character because we know so little about him, and he's
and his children,
most important. Like his children are on one of the most important journeys, and he was at one of the most important events
Yeah.
But George said we're going to see him in the books. We are going to see him. So it'll be interesting to see who will see him through.
I mean, you cannot. Was there off the page? Was there a, Mira and Jojen leave Greywater Watch and they're saying goodbye to their father.
Oh,
Jojen can see his own death and knows that, no, that's not the day I die. That's not the day. That's the day that I die. So he knows that he's not going to come back. He knows that he's sending his children off and possibly they're never, ever, ever going to come back.
How cool would it be if we had like a prologue or epilogue where it's Jojen meeting his fate in the north, and he's also in the meanwhile flashing back to like saying goodbye to his father, or somehow
I'm convinced. So I'm convinced, and I've said this before, that the prologue of Winds of Winter will be located at Greywater Watch.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah, because the clues that we've got are, it's going to be centered around a Maester. So remember, we usually have Wildling north of the Wall versus Maester Citadel location. So it will be centered around a Maester. Somebody will die, because somebody always dies in a prologue. And George has said Jane Westerling will be.
That's right. Yeah, you said that.
It's like, think about where she is or where she's located and where Rob was investing all his, this is where I want, possibly sending his will and all that, he sent something, he sent some information in the books, which will be coming up too soon to Greywater Watch. So my, again, complete tinfoil wacky theory is...
I don't think so, yeah.
The prologue will be Jane Westerling and a Maester at Greywater Watch. And the reason that the Maester has to die in that chapter, in the prologue, is because of knowledge of Jane Westerling's pregnant...
This is the thing.
Why would there be a Maester and Jane Westerling in the same chapter, in the same prologue? It's got to be something to do with that. And if there were, I think I've just thrown Greywater Watch in as a, wouldn't that be perfect?
Well,
if Maester of Greywater Watch.
It might fit in with all the conversations we've been having about Maesters, because I don't think Maesters, the way they operate, I don't think that marries with any kind of magic or the way the Cronall operate. Like, do they necessarily have a Maester?
Yeah, maybe not, because it's like...
Because why not send a raven? Why send your children?
Yeah.
Like, it's, there's something not quite right there. That would be fantastic if as long as he doesn't really die as soon as we meet him. We've got a few comments here. Ian says, the Howland Reed mystery is driving millions insane since the 90s. Yeah. Hashtag save Jojen. Hashtag save Mira. Yeah. Hashtag weirwood paste. A good place to hide the heir with Ned's bones. Essentially. The other thing that I had here. Oh yeah, Hodor stopping to watch the Master of the Horse have sex.
Yeah.
And Bran was like, oh. Bran's line is, it was the Master of Horse and he was doing a different type of riding. And in the last chapter, he was like, oh, when men and women get together, a man lies on top of a woman. When he was talking about the Manderleys, thinking about him and Horde. Yeah. So it's just showing with the passage of time how much growing up he has to do, because now he's got a better understanding of what they're doing. He's like, oh, come on, Hodor. Like, and he's like, we all know what this is. So it's just, I think it's just like, it's funny, but it's also just a way of popping in. Like, this is how much popping in phrasing. Sorry, it's just a way of like showing how much he's got to grow up so quickly.
Yeah,
like he's gone from being ignored in the last chapter to being like the center of attention because of Mira and Jojen. And the maturity that he has to.
I did think it was quite mean that he was like, clearly Hodor was having a wonderful time, and And it's like, you know, Bran needed a taxi back to his room, so we dragged him away from the party.
Uber, Hodor Uber.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but it is nice to finally have Mira and Jojen. I feel like we're getting into it now. So,
yeah.
But it's huge mystery. I mean, we don't get much more about the Crannog men. Like that's as much as we kind of get, right?
Yeah.
We don't really get that much more. Anyway, then we're on to a very long chapter.
Yes.
Cat's chapter. I loved this chapter.
Yeah.
And we all know why. You love this chapter because we meet Brienne.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Finally, and there's just a very interesting choice of introduction POV. I was thinking about that, but I just want to.
Well. Yeah.
I just wanted to start with where Cat's chapter starts, just coming off because it's so long, but just coming off of Bran's chapter. If I can find it now, it opens with. As she slept amidst the rolling grasslands, Catelyn dreamt that Bran was whole again, that Arya and Sansa held hands, that Rickon was still a babe at her breast, Robb, crownless, played with a wooden sword, and when all were safe asleep, she found Ned in her bed smiling. And it comes off of Bran spinning and falling, and then just like goes into this. She's dreaming that Bran was whole again. And I said this when we were doing our Game of Thrones reread that I do think there's some sort of in Game of Thrones there was some sort of other consciousness creeping in and influencing Kat's thoughts. I don't get that sense here as much, but there seems to be an echo of something. Right now, I felt that she was there was some other interference, a lot more kind of inner monologue that seemed not to quite fit with what she was saying out loud or to thoughts she just had. So here I don't seem to get that as much, but there's some great stuff in this chapter, especially with Renly, but also yeah. Sorry, go on.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. I think there is that. It's nice how it kind of span off from the last chapter with Bran. But I do think that the thing that jumped out for me was her thinking. It's like she's almost reminiscing. So these things have all happened before. All those things that she said have happened before. She's had, you know, Ned smiling in a bed. Bran has been whole before. Robb at one point never had a crown. The only thing that I think has never ever happened before is Arya and Sansa holding hands. So what the heck does that mean? Does that mean that is that some kind of foreshadowing where it means that in the end of the story, Arya and Sansa will stand together united, they will hold hands, they will, you know, they have got each other's backs, they always had each other's backs. It was just a very strange thing to describe Arya and Sansa holding hands. That's the
only thing. And also this idea of, well, Robb will be crownless. I guess he won't die crownless though. He'll still have his crown when he dies. Sorry, spoiler alert. But Rickon at her breast, unless Rickon dies somewhere around her, unless he's with her or she's with him when he dies, potentially. I mean, as I said, Rickon, he's our only Stark that doesn't, apart from Robb, that doesn't get a POV. So it's a bit of a mystery what's going to happen to him. It is it's a very strange thing, the Arya and Sansa holding hands. Was she completely oblivious to what their relationship was like?
No, I think she knew that through, if anything, through the scepter, Mordain. You know, with the because that was how they, you know, they were disciplined and things. So
also, what does it mean to have Robb whole or to have Bran whole again? Like in her, like obviously his legs and everything, but I mean, it seemed like Bran was always kind of searching for something, climbing, looking, searching for something. So, for the reader, it doesn't feel like he's always been whole. Like he's never been whole. Like the legs are just a physical indication of that. But and the one person, of course, that she completely misses here is Jon. which I know she hates Jon, but remember that in Game of Thrones, it was like Jon the bastard, blah, 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 the whole time.
Yeah.
And here she doesn't even think about him as being part of the family makeup, but he would have been there with Rob.
I wonder if, I think out of all of the children who are capable of walking that we see in the books, and I know it's only Bran in the show, we see it with Arya, we see it with Jon, we see it with Bran, obviously. Bran seems to be the one that's got the most potential to just walk into someone and then lose it completely and just be stuck and trapped in there forever. So that could be a way that Bran ends up being whole again. I mean, he would end up losing himself ultimately, and just becoming no one. But yeah,
it's an interesting opening line. But yeah, so it starts off with Rob. He's sending her because she wants to go north.
I'm just laughing at Pisan saying baby Sansa and Arya probably held hands. Oh, that's so sweet.
That's nice. Yeah, and tragic. But yeah, there's probably a time when they were close.
Yeah.
You know, like. But anyway, we have Rob arguing with her. She doesn't really want to go south, and he says, "If you don't go, I have to send." I think it's Great John Umber, right? He threatens to send, and she knows that would be a disaster, so she has to go, even though she doesn't want to. And
can I just say, what she just flip flops so much?
Yes,
she's saying here, "Oh, I should be heading to Winterfell. I should be going to see my children. I should be going to see the boy." She sends a letter. It's like she's saying in her head in this chapter, I shouldn't be going where, I shouldn't be heading this way. I should be heading to Winterfell. But she's already said several times, I'm not going anywhere. I'm here to be with my father. He's dying. I'm not going. So what? Just she seems is very. Oh, she kind of emotionally manipulates herself. She's a weird one, doesn't she? You know what I mean?
She's so annoying. She's so annoying at times. I mean, even the way we'll get on to how she speaks about Brienne, but yeah, the thing, Rob tells her that they're going to march, and she says, "Oh right, on Harrenhal," and he says, "I didn't say it was Harrenhal.
Yeah,
I'm not going to tell you where I'm going." Which that's okay. First of all, I don't think it's just because he can't trust her. It's probably because if she's captured, she can't say anything.
Yeah.
But still, I wouldn't tell her either.
Yeah.
Even if she was going home, I wouldn't tell her where they were going. But yeah, it's just interesting. And then she gets to Renly. There's a couple of things with Renly. It's funny how many of the men she names out, like Tarly and things like that, that are so anti-Lannister, and they're making digs at Lannisters. They've got a whole show, oh, Lannisters, this and that. And like a lot of them are going to go over back to the crown later. So it's just one of those things where like nobody is ever an ally completely. And you can never trust what anybody says, really. She wonders as she's going in, as they're bringing her in, if she'll be captured by them. And I guess she won't be captured, but she'll certainly become a sort of outlaw in the eyes of many of the men there. Which kind of leaves her being guilty, well, in the eyes of Rob's guys, and being guilty like later on. Like she kind of does end up, she's already laying the foundations for her being not a vigilante necessarily, but definitely an outlaw, which is where she's going to end up going, especially as we get into Feast and stuff like that. And it's great then that we meet Brienne through her here, and later on we'll meet Stonehouse through Brienne. And I love that kind of the mirroring there. I loved how she's getting ready and she sees the face of a drowned woman and wonders if she can drown in grief. And again, just this foreshadowing, because when her son is killed in front of her, just the grief, the overwhelming sense of grief, and her whole mind fractures within a couple of pages. And like, if she can't handle Ned's death, her kids are handling Ned's death way better than she is. And she's having trouble handling that then. There's no way she could have ever handled a child's death. And the way she introduces Brienne, I don't know how you felt about the way she talks about Brienne. I can't figure out if it's realistic, insightful, because I think she recognizes that Brienne is in love with Renly, or condescending, or all three. I can't. Like, it's just like
Yeah,
some of the
all
things she's
three,
saying.
all three. But again,
All three, yeah.
this is another character who's introduced to the reader through the eyes of, you've got to think about who they're being introduced to. It's not, you know, you're not meeting them, you're meeting them through Cat. And with Cat, there's lots of vanity. You know, she's very entitled. She is, you know, we've read this. We've been in Cat's head where she had a very similar encounter with Maya Stone going up the Eyrie. Do you remember? She was very judgmental and very kind of, you know, all about appearance and things. And it's like, oh God, you are so annoying, Cat.
She'd have a job on Fox News, I'd say, if she was around.
Yeah. But she's, I mean, just going back to Rob before we get to Renly, I think he's definitely becoming more commanding. We're now getting the sense of he's being more secretive. He's not sharing his plans, and he's getting quite restless. And P-Sand was saying in the comments that Cat is the political brain while Rob is the military brain. Yeah, I think definitely Cat is more political than Rob. She's got more experience and more history and knowledge of who's who in this battle. Rob, I think he's growing up quite quickly though, and it's gone from him being embarrassed by his mother in front of his men a few chapters ago to who told you that we were marching on Harrenhal? You know nothing, mother.
Yeah.
So that's quite interesting, because I think that later on, as we go on and she goes back, there's more of that. He becomes more and more withdrawn from Cat, to the point where when we see him with all his men around him and he's writing his will, she has no part of that. She's like shunned from that whole. I mean, we will get to that, but you can see it already. The beginning of Rob just pushing his mother away into a reasonably dangerous situation. Yes. Like you said, you know, it's like she's going into somebody else's host. She could be killed immediately. I mean, they're saying there's nobody else that could go, but she's only got 20 men with her. She's saying that she's not really seeing that much trouble or death or battles or anything. So I don't know which way they're going, but clearly it's more dangerous where Arya is.
Yeah, it's down towards the south.
But they're unfurling the Stark banners and everything, and it's like, whoa, you're just not, you don't seem to be kind of doing this undercover. It's she's taking lots of risks here, lots and lots of risks.
I do agree that I think she does have a good political brain from time to time, and I think this is the saddest part of the breakdown of her relationship with Rob. For both of them, they could really play to one another's strengths more if she could just let go of being his mother, and if he could let go of being a son trying to fill his father's shoes or exceed his father's shoes. But I feel like because Rob is too trusting and Kat is slow to trust people, and I think they could probably match their strengths a bit better. And he isn't as emotional as she is, but at times she definitely can read people way better than Rob can. Like, she can read a situation. She knows her place. The thing I found strange with the Renly situation. So when she sees him, she calls him a ghost in a golden crown, which I thought, again, great foreshadowing. But the idea that the whole way throughout the rest of the chapter, she thinks of him as King Renly. Now, her son is king, but she always keeps wishing he wasn't. So it's almost like a wish fulfillment thing that maybe that's what protects her, the fact that she does think of him as king.
Yeah, somebody else will take over this mess at some point and relieve my poor boy of this horrible.
Why Rob being king at all? And I think that's a huge problem. And I think Rob can see that.
Yeah, yeah.
Pisan said, Cat, all females, is a product of her status. It would be odd if all women subvert what their society expects and makes of them. Arya really is the only one. I'd say Dany as well, although Dany is a lot of sport, I guess. If everyone had listened to Cat at the end of a Game of Thrones, they would all still be alive. That's what's annoying. They should have seen what they were doing. Yeah, I agree. And also the fact that like there's a intermarrying between the Lannisters and the Freys should be a massive red flag. That I don't know, they seem to be ignoring. But yeah, so Renly and his tourney then, and the Brienne stuff. So what did you think of all of that?
My question is, it's kind of going back to Varys's quote that power resides where men believe it resides. And I don't think that Renly really has power. I think he's popular. He's very popular. He's that kind of, you know, the Meister at Dragonstone was Meister Crescent, who described him as copper. He was shiny, but it's all very kind of like, you know, not really worth anything. I think that the power in this situation, in this huge host of 100,000, you know, and he says you can see, there's into the horizon, just troops and troops and troops, and the numbers, he's got the numbers, but it's not him. Power resides in this situation with the Tyrells. He needs the Tyrells. He's even sat at one of these ridiculous holiday camp feasts. He's sat in between Marjorie and Loras. He's a patsy for the Tyrells, basically, in this situation. They need him as a figurehead, and that's all he is. He's just a shiny figurehead. He's a nice guy, and he's very courteous to Cat, and he vows to avenge Ned, and he's very, you know, he wants to, going back to what Crescent was saying, they like to, it's kind of like he's playing at being king. It's all for show. And
Pisan says at this point in the story, everything's in flux and anyone could have won. Do you think Renly could have won at this stage?
I think he could have won with the numbers. Absolutely.
See, I don't think he ever would have taken the throne. I don't think he ever would have done it.
I don't think him personally. No, I think all of he's just that. It's almost like he is a ghost. He is a shadow, and it's not. It's really not a shock that he was taken out so early. This is the beginning of the Tyrells' thirst for power, and how they are using Renly and his ridiculous boyish ideals to their advantage. It's all for, I mean, just the way Renly and Marjorie behave, it's they're just putting on a show. Everything is just, it's just they're putting on a show. And you know, it's,
but what a show. Like, it's the hottest club to be at right now.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But I feel like once the season changes, even if nothing happened, if everybody stayed where they are, once the season changes, I think they all would have started going back to thinking, you know, maybe we need Stannis, maybe we need a real leader in charge. I do think he's smart. I think he is smart, and like Pisan said, he's smarter. Renly's smarter than he gets credit for. But I think even just at the end of this chapter, the first time we meet him, he's besieged. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
Like, Stannis is at the gate. Like, idiot. Like, how did you not think that was going to happen?
Yeah.
In my head, I was like, this. First of all, I think they're both idiots. I think Stannis probably should have gone straight to King's Landing. Yeah. And took his throne and not worried about his brother playing the peacock.
But
Stannis would have to have dealt with Highgarden.
He needs the Stormlords, doesn't he? And he's tried everything. He's tried sending out envoys. He's tried Davos trying to smooth things over. It's just not working for him. People do not like Stannis. So he's decided that what he wants to do is show a strength of force.
Yeah.
Which means, you know what, the thing that's really pissed me off about all of this, the one thing that the first thing that annoyed me is that somebody took Storm's End from me. Let's go there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's do that first. Let's rally the Storm Lords, get them behind me, get rid of this idiot boy king who it's just all flowers and for show, and you know, some are children. And I mean, they're so, even Brienne, very arrogant about it. Winter won't come for us.
Yeah.
We're very, it's very, I mean, this just made me smile because it's like, oh, Brienne, you are such a, I'm just wondering if one of my cats will come running because I've got a cat called Brienne in honor of Brienne, one of my favorite characters. She's just a warrior with a maid's heart. That's who Brienne is. She's such a tragic character, but I love her. I love her so much.
I love her. She's one of my favorite characters for sure.
But
if Stannis didn't have Mel, Renly would have won, definitely. Feudal politics is a lot about appearance. Oh, I don't know about that. I'd like, not that feudal politics wasn't about appearance, but I don't know if Mel was a hindrance or a help to Stannis.
Yeah, and the Tyrells are quite a force already, you know. I think that this is just this is them harnessing power, and they're using Renly.
Why didn't they go to Stannis?
The Tyrells?
Apart from the fact that Renly is single and they could get rid of their daughter, but I mean, why do they go to Renly? Is it because of the Loras collection?
They're kind of grubbing servants, aren't they, the Tyrells? That's their history. So I think what they do is similar to Littlefinger. They will look to somebody who they think they will be able to manipulate, who may be a bit naive, and they've got, there's you know, the whole Renly and Loras situation.
Is that it? Like, that's to me like the main thing. Like, it's Loras that gets
I think they were always going to go with, it's like, okay, we can make a grab for power here. Who do we ally with? Do we ally with Mayable, manipulative, you know, who's able to be manipulated, Renly, who's in love with our grandson, or do we go with Stannis, who's got this weird religion? I mean, we've already discussed, how did Stannis ever think he was going to be able to win anybody over with this weird new religion that's burning all the old effigies of the new gods?
Stannis has a really bad PR problem.
Oh, completely.
And his hand is basically almost without a hand, thanks to Stannis. So that's what loyalty gets for Stannis. Yeah, it's just, I still wonder though, with someone like Tarly, respect to Stannis more because of those kind of things. Maybe not the religion thing, but it's a strange one. I feel like it's amazing. Like, it feels like such a festive thing, this whole chapter around Renly. And it's like, wow, this is what it felt like to be around Robert, you know?
Yeah.
This is fun, like, you know, having a tourney, and it's a rainbow thing, and you know, and we're gonna have a woman on, like, as the Kingsguard, and it feels very progressive, and you know, like obviously Renly's paying more attention to Loras, but he's not horrible to Marjorie, and Marjorie seems pretty happy with the setup. So it's the feasting as well, like, it's ridiculous. They're not preparing for winter. They're just enjoying themselves.
I'm just thinking, I wonder how close we were to having a Marjorie Robb marriage alliance.
Oh, That's an
Because that would
when was that ever considered? See,
it must have, yeah.
So if Loras wasn't in the picture, I don't think they would have gone to Renly.
Yeah, maybe not.
Because
maybe not.
It's not. Renly has absolutely, he has no claim, and I do like what he says though. I mean, who needs a claim? Like, you can just take it. Robert just
he's got the numbers. He's got the numbers. That's hands down. He's got the numbers. If you were on paper to ally with, you would. The biggest consideration is who's got.
Of all the kings in Westeros right now, I'd prefer Renly.
Yeah,
a bit of crack.
Yeah.
He probably feed people. He seems to have a bit more compassion, and just what he says though about the maesters, that the maesters are the only one that the only maesters care about blood. That, you know, Robert just took the throne, but because of some vague kind of Targaryen Baratheon connection in the bloodline. But he said only maesters care about that. In reality, nobody cares. Like, they just want somebody on the throne that they like, and they love me. They'll never love Stannis.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if it's too simplistic a view of the way things work. P-Sand agrees with you, saying the Tyrells are so grasping it's almost over the top. Renly is the glorious in appearance anyway, summer that will never happen. Yeah. And P-Sand also says Renly was trying to use the Tyrells as much as they use him. In a Game of Thrones, he was plotting to get rid of the Lannisters by getting Robert to set aside Cersei and marry Marjorie. Yeah, so it's
Renly's the false king.
This is
when we had like the false spring, and Renly's the false king.
Yeah, and this is the point. If, say, Robert had died and, like, you know, the Lannisters had already gone on the run, would Renly have tried to get Stannis to set aside his wife so that he could get Marjorie in charge? Like, I don't see that happening, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, Renly is definitely plotting. But then I think Stannis and Jon Arryn were plotting. I think everybody was trying to get Robert out of there, or at least get the Lannisters out of there.
He's got not really that many cares as well. Renly, he's flexing. He's flexing his numbers, and he feels like, you know, there's not going to be an issue here. There's not going to be a problem. It's always summer in the songs.
Yeah.
Did you get the when Cat goes into the pavilion? So he gives her a pavilion. It sounds like a wonderful hotel room, actually. And she sees a reflection in some armor, and she describes it as the face of a drowned woman.
Yeah.
I was just, my jaw dropped when I read that.
And that's where she asks, can someone drown in grief?
Yeah.
Which, it is. I feel like this chapter, there's, with all the life that's in it, there is this, like, you know, definitely her death and Renly's death are foreshadowed in it.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
What did you think of Tarly?
Well, from what I can recall, I didn't make any notes on it, he was kind of pushing his luck a bit, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So he was being a bit like, you know, ideas above his station kind of thing. Can't remember what he said. What did he say?
No, it was just the first time we see him, and we obviously know what he is like from Sam.
Yeah.
Just the first time we see him, within the same sentence, it's like there's Randolph Tarly with Heartsbane, and just from the Bran chapter where we had Arthur Dane with Dawn, and then Randolph Tarly with Heartsbane, and then we're going to go straight into John chapter. Just thinking about the implications of Lightbringer and who the Azor Ahai might be. I just thought it was interesting that those two swords in particular are named back to back. So yeah, that's I was really interested in the Brienne stuff, to be honest, and it was hard to concentrate on the other stuff. It is. I don't think though we would get much more. I know we're not. Renly is not long for this world But I don't think we'd get much more out of him. I feel like what you see is what you get. He's very like Robert, like that. The Baratheons are very much like, this is who we are, and that's it.
I'm really looking forward to, which I know must be in like the next chapter, the meeting between Stannis and Renly and the Peach. I'm really looking forward to that, because I know that it's something that it really haunts Stannis, that memory.
Yeah. P. says that he thinks Renly would have tried to be named as Stannis's heir, and also that he loves House Baratheon. Me too. I love House Baratheon. There's not much fury in Renly, though, is there? Of all the Baratheons, he's the least furious.
Yeah.
You know, ours is the fury. He doesn't seem to be furious. So
maybe it's more of a sneaky fury, because he's definitely he's a plotter.
He's definitely a plotter, but there doesn't seem to be much fight in him. I don't know. I think he's too much of a peacock.
Do you think that alliance would have worked between, you know, you're the king in the north, I'm the king in the south, thanks very much, let's all...
I don't know if the Tyrells would have allowed it to work for too long. Because I think the Tyrells would want the Lannisters completely wiped out. So would they start moving towards Casterly Rock then?
Yeah.
Like, how far will they go? Like the Tyrells, to me, just seem to be the Lannisters watered down slightly. There's potential for them to be
definitely
very dodgy, I think.
So
interesting. Peace is saying all the kings combined would make a great king. Yeah. Apart from Joffrey. We don't need any of Joffrey.
No.
But that's about it. Yeah.
So next week we've got 7 chapters that we're reading, and we've got Jon again. He's north of the wall. We've got Theon in Pike. We've got Arya at Harrenhal. We've got Dany, and the last time we saw Dany was when the 3, you know, Pyat Pri and Quaith, and so that's going to be Karth, I think, next time.
And then Tyrion, is it?
And then Tyrion continuing whatever's, you know, again, the 2 location-based will be Tyrion and Bran. I don't think Bran's travelling at the moment.
And we're getting some big additions, big character additions, even into this late into the book.
Yeah.
With Theon and with Jon. We're meeting some big characters.
Yes,
so, that should be fun. So thank you to everybody who joined us in the chat. Peace, and thank you for all your amazing input. And Claire, thank you so much. And I will see you next Sunday. Same bat time, same bat channel. Yeah. Have a great week, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.